South of the Empire, across the Black Mountains, sits the Border Prince's region, a wretched land of harsh terrain, rocky badlands, putrid swamps, and messy scrubland. Only the most desperate would willingly call it home. Despite this, through the years, many nations have made efforts to settle it, before deciding it wasn't worth the time and resources, and abandoning the region, leaving nothing but ruins to prove they were there. One such ruin was Kephre's tomb, built at the height of the kingdom of Necromancer to honor one of their many priests. To the locals, peasants, and self-proclaimed lords of the region, the tomb is a blight on the land, its undead guardians preventing them from approaching, the only saving grace being that the land isn't of much use, even if it could be accessed, with swampy pools and thick brambles littering the terrain. But of course, where there is security and deterrence, there must be something worth protecting. The promise of wealth, magic items, and perhaps even forbidden knowledge stored within makes a tempting prospect to adventurers the world over. One such adventurer was the Necromancer Aleks Schott. Driven from the Empire by witch hunters after the death of his mentor, the chaotic lands of the Border Princes provided him with all the materials he needed to raise a horde of undead servants of his own. He made his way through the region, traveling from town to town and picking up on local rumors. He had already raised a warband of zombies and skeletons by the time he heard of the tomb and the skeletons that protected it. Aleks incorrectly concluded that Kephre was a necromancer like himself, and suspected that his tomb must be home to valuable magic tools to practice his craft. And so he set off to destroy, or take command of the undead around the tomb, and plunder its riches. When he arrived, he was shocked to find several more skeletons than he had expected, each wearing strange armor. As he assembled his servants to fight, he was surprised once more as the mummified corpse of Kephre himself and his accompanying guards emerged from the tomb, ready to defend what was theirs. Even with this new threat, Aleks wasn't one to back down, and so the plundering of Kephre's tomb began. Today's game is a 350-point solo game of Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition Warbands, played between Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts. The forces rolled for deployment in first turn, and the Tomb Kings won both rolls, forcing the Vampire Counts to deploy first, but also opting to give them the first turn. Given the narrative behind the battle, the objective of this game is to kill the warlord of either side. Should Aleks fall in the fight, obviously he would be unable to claim the plunder, while the death of Kephre would spell certain defeat for the Tomb King's army. On that note, before we examine the units in each army, it would be a good idea to explain a few mechanics surrounding undead units, and the Tomb Kings in particular. Unlike other units, undead units do not flee when they are defeated in battle. They will stand and fight to the last soldier. When they lose combat, instead of taking a leadership test, they suffer an additional number of wounds, equal to the difference in their combat resolution score. Tomb Kings also have an unusual mechanic in that they are required to have both a general and a hierophant. In typical games, these two characters must be separate, but in Warbands they are one and the same. The hierophant is the character responsible for the magic that holds the army together. When they die, each turn, every unit makes a leadership test to avoid falling apart. In a small-scale game like this, the death of the Hierophant ensures the army will fall apart within the next 2 or 3 turns. With that in mind, let's look at the Tomb King's army. They are led by Kephre, a Liche Priest who is the general and Hierophant of the army. He is protected by a unit of 7 Tomb Guard, which have set up on the steps of the tomb. To either side, there is a unit of skeleton warriors, each with light armor, spears, and shields. The unit to the right has 10 models, while the unit on the left has only 5. On the Vampire Count's side, the army is led by the Necromancer Aleks Schott. He is a Necromancer that is upgraded to a level 2 wizard. He rolled the Gaze of Nagash and Van Hel's Dance Macabre for spells, and opted to replace Dance Macabre with the Invocation of Nehek, a key part of any Vampire Count's army. He is accompanied by a unit of 10 skeletons with light armor, spears, and shields. They are deployed in the center of the battlefield to march across the otherwise difficult terrain to reach the Tomb Kings first. Beside them are 2 units of 10 zombies, while the far flank is occupied by a pair of dire wolves. The Vampire Counts begin their turn with a bold march forward, the dire wolves running up their flank. while the skeletons and one unit of zombies march directly ahead. Vampire Count undead units need to be within 12 inches of their general to be able to march, however, and so the zombies on the far flank are unable to do so, instead having to wheel on the spot to avoid the swamp directly in front of them. Because of this, Aleks also hurries across the swamp in front of him to keep pace with his soldiers and allow them to continue their relentless advance. Aleks casts Gaze of Nagash at the Tomb Guard and manages to kill one, before trying and failing to cast Invocation of Nehek. This will prove to be the only time that any magic is successfully cast in this game, as neither side has much luck in rolling high to cast spells, while the spell rolls are consistently high. Across the battlefield, the Tomb Kings remain in position. As Tomb Kings undead are unable to march, they lack the mobility to take advantageous fights, and are better off holding position and waiting for the enemy to approach. Kephre attempts to restore the single lost Tomb Guard but fails, an action he will be repeating for the rest of the battle. The Vampire Count's advance continues, the skeletons pushing ahead while the zombies struggle with the difficult terrain and Aleks being out of range to march. He fixes this by moving into the middle of the formation to be in range of all of the units, which will hopefully see them getting into the fight in time. The direwolves, meanwhile, manage to swing around the flank and threaten the rear of the first unit of skeletons. The Tomb Kings make some minor adjustments in response, the skeletons on the flank about facing to meet the direwolves, while Kephre steps out of the unit of Tomb Guard, allowing them to engage without risking the Hierophant's life. The Tomb Guard reforms as he leaps, filling the gap in the line that he created. Kephre stepped out just in time as the skeletons declare a charge on the Tomb Guard. Unfortunately, the Tomb Guard weren't quite deployed on the line, and so the skeletons fall a half-inch short of their charge. The direwolves charge into the skeleton warriors and manage to kill one of them. They fail to do any damage in return, and so lose one more skeleton to combat resolution. While the fight is breaking out, Aleks is once more casting Invocation of Nehek, but rolls 2 1s and miscasts a spell. The magic energy snaps back at him, and he suffers a wound as a result. Though this has little impact on the battle, it is the first miscast that we've seen on this channel, and so I wanted to take the time to highlight it. As the Tomb King's turn comes around, the Tomb Guard pounce on the exposed skeletons, cutting one down, but losing one of their own to combat resolution, as they are both outnumbered and fighting a foe with deeper ranks. The skeleton warriors to their left move forward, stepping out of the shrubs that held them back, and getting a little closer to the fight. The direwolves continue fighting the skeleton warriors, killing another and not taking any damage in return. Now pressured by the superior bulk of the wolves and the damage taken, the skeleton warriors lose 2 more to combat resolution and are destroyed. The direwolves quickly pivot forward in the next turn, threatening both a charge on the Tomb Guard's flank and on Kephre himself. The fight between the skeletons and the Tomb Guard continues with the same results, 1 skeleton falling, but 1 more Tomb Guard dying to combat resolution. In the next turn, the skeleton warriors charge the skeletons in the flank, and even though they don't inflict any damage, the 2 wounds inflicted by the Tomb Guard and their superior numbers pushing on the side inflict incredible losses on Aleks' skeletons, with 5 more falling, leaving just 1 to stand and fight. In the next turn, the Vampire Counts swing the game completely into their favor. 1 unit of zombies charges through the muck of the swamps and connects with the side of the skeleton warriors. The other unit moves in behind the skeletons, ready to face the Tomb Guard in the next round. Finally, at the back of the fight, Kephre is charged by the direwolves. The zombies manage to kill a single skeleton while taking no damage in return. Having hit them on the flank with superior numbers and a proper formation, even a small victory like this snowballs, and half the skeletons have been destroyed in the first turn. The Tomb Guard, meanwhile, strike down the last remaining skeleton and turn their gaze on the zombies ahead. It's all for naught, however, as the direwolves inflict a grievous wound on Kephre, who fails to do any damage in return. Combat resolution sees the Hierophant fall. With his death, the magic holding the Tomb Kings together begins to unravel, and the remaining skeleton warriors collapse into dust. The Tomb Guard holds strong, only 1 of them falling for now. They pass the next test too, and charge into the zombies, but fail to do any damage. Once again, combat resolution almost kills them, and the inevitability of the Tomb King's defeat sinks in. With the Guardians of the Tomb defeated, Aleks is finally left in peace to raise additional zombies. He casts Invocation of Nehek one last time, bringing 9 fresh corpses from the bog to join his army, before heading into the tomb. Inside, he finds gold and jewels scattered across the floor, as well as a staff of sorcery and ancient texts on the rituals for raising and binding the undead. Armed with this newfound wealth and power, he looks to the surrounding villages, with ambitions of standing among the ranks of the lords that rule these lands. But that is a story for another time. Before we look at the tactics used, if you enjoyed this battle report, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Every bit helps the channel grow and ensure there are plenty more Warbands battle reports to come. Next week will be the 17th battle at Rat Poke Pass, a 150-point battle between Skaven and Night Goblins. And now, on to the tactics review. Is what I would say, but before that there are a few things about this battle I'd like to address. First off, this battle was actually restarted after the second turn. Originally, I made a few mistakes with the rules, allowing the Tomb Kings to march, and forgetting about the Hierophant rules, so Kephre was almost killed in the second turn as a result. I also played out the magic interactions poorly, and so the skeleton unit was already at 22 models by the end of the second turn. The battle was proving so one-sided, I decided to discard it and try again. The other thing I'd like to highlight is that the lack of magic on the vampire count side is a little suspicious. That's because I misread how many power dice they were generating and used the Dispel dice formula instead. I don't know how that happened because I definitely knew better, but there should have been an extra dice in play that would have given Aleks a bit more impact on the battlefield. Now with those confessions out of the way, let's talk strategy. The battlefield played a major role in this battle. I glossed over the impact it would have on the vampire counts when deploying, and so the zombies ended up traffic jammed. Stacking the entire army into a column and advancing to the middle of the battlefield before fanning out likely would have been a wiser choice. As it was, one unit of zombies basically didn't contribute anything to the fight. As for the Tomb Kings, the deployment of the units was also poorly thought out. The 2 units on the flanks should have been flipped. If they were, the added ranks would have kept the skeleton warriors in the fight and probably caused the wolves to flee. That alone would have snowballed the game in the Tomb King's favour and prevented Kephre from dying as he did. Once again, if you enjoyed this battle, please do subscribe, as next week marks the end of the initial run of Warbands games, and after that I'll be doing a few bigger battles, including another Vampire Counts battle to continue the story of Aleks Schott.